Welcome to Book Talks, the show that speaks to education, health, entrepreneurship, and so much more.
Hello South Africa, welcome to yet another episode of Vogue Talks. I am your host, Munjezi Makuba. With me here I have Mr. Thulani Sibuyi, the DG of the Civilian Secretariat for Police Office. Welcome, Mr. DG.
Thank you very much. I feel happy to be here. Thank you.
And it's an honor to have you here with us. A lot of people are not really familiar with your department, even I myself as well. The moment that I got familiar with it was when I went through DPSA. I was trying to apply for a job, which I ended up not getting. So can you please briefly unpack the mandate of the Civilian Secretariat for Police Service?
No, thanks, Makuba. The Department for Civilian Secretariat for Police, and that's what it's called. It's a department established in terms of the Constitution, and its main functions really is to monitor the performance of the police, give strategic advice to the minister. We are responsible for development of policies and legislations that guides policing in the country. But more importantly, it's a department that must bridge the gap between policing and the community. So we need to ensure that the community get involved in the policing initiatives of the country for safer communities. So that's basically the mandate of the department. But also we have a responsibility to monitor the implementation of Domestic Violence Act and report to various structures, including Parliament, if there are issues in relation to non-compliance on the implementation of the DVA, Domestic Violence Act. So it is a strategic department. It's very important. It's a policy department. Yes, it's correct that many people may not know the Department Civilian Secretariat for Police. Hence, it's important that we start engaging in community initiatives to promote what the department does, because the department does a very important work to coordinate and implement and develop policies for policing in the country. It's one of the important work that we do. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. DJ. So how are the members of the community supposed to participate in the fight against crime?
Members of the community are a very important stakeholder. You will not be in the position to fight crime if there is no community involvement. Therefore, Civilian Secretariat for Police strive to organize communities to be more structured in the fight against crime. That is why today we have a policy that establishes community policing forums, which are the mouthpiece of the community in the policing environment. But we also work with other stakeholders, your Business Against Crime Forum, your various NGOs that are involved in the fight against crime. Therefore, the way communities are structured and are important pillar in the fight against crime is very important to us, because if you want safer communities, you must collaborate with the communities. If you don't collaborate with the communities, it's very difficult to fight crime. Communities are a pillar in this exercise. That is why we always urge communities that even at a street level, they must be proactive and take part in what is going on. They must know how families are structured. They must ensure that they know their neighbors and so forth. They must know what is happening in their streets. If there are foreign elements or they suspect abuses within families or in their streets, they must be able to report that to authorities, in particular the police in the area. Hence, we promote what we call sector policing, because it then bring everybody together within various sectors and make sure that people participate. Families are very important. Neighbors are very important. For instance, when you deal with your domestic violence issues, it's a crime that happens mostly indoors. I was in Venda the past week, and I've gone through the domestic violence register in the Thohoyandou police station, for instance, and I've realized that in that register, just for the month of April, the majority of the cases, or 90% of the cases that were reported, were people that are either lovers, ex-boyfriends, ex-husband and ex-wives. So you will realize that it's a close crime that happens within the closed door. Hence, the involvement of communities, of neighbors, when we see signs of abuse, to report those things, are very important so that we are able to prevent such from happening.
All right. Our country is deemed as one of the most crime-prone countries in the world. What do you think is the cause of the problem?
Are we really? Are we? Look, crime levels in the country, take the third quarter report stats. We are starting to see signs of crime going down. When you look, especially violent crime, your murder, your domestic violence, your assault, your gender-based violence and femicide and so forth. But even as if it goes down, we still feel it's still high. So therefore, we must do more to make sure that we bring crime down together. That is why, as a department, we are involved in many initiatives, and one of the most important initiatives is the implementation of what we call an integrated crime and violence prevention strategy, which calls for a whole of government and a whole of society approach. Because if there is no development in the country, or I mean to say, if there is a high crime area in the country, therefore development doesn't happen. So the entire value chain is very important. You need the whole of government to work together. You need the economic cluster to be doing well in terms of ensuring that there is growth in the economy. You need the social cluster to be doing well. And for all of these things to happen, you need a crime-free country so that there is stability in investment, there is economic growth, and investors don't feel afraid to come and invest in the country. So it's extremely important that the whole of government come together in the fight against crime. Just as an example, where we were last week in Thohoyandou, one of the biggest area is that we have identified is that as the statistician general releases employment stats, and confirmed by the community that the youth in the area remains unemployed, so there is high levels of unemployment. As a result, they become vulnerable to many things. That is why we need this investment. We need the economic cluster to come in so that we are able to effectively fight crime. But you also need the whole of society. When we grew up, we knew that a child is not a child of the family, but it's a child of the village. So it takes a village to bring up the child. So you need families to be what we call not to be broken families. You need families to be units that are so important, that plays an important role in the upbringing of the child. That is why the strategy says to us the first 1,000 days of a child becomes very important in molding how the child is going to be. So if you have broken families and so forth, you are most likely to have a child that is going to grow up incorrectly. But as the child steps into the school environment, we need schools to be safe, because these are safe havens for our children to be able to bring up children that are proper, that are positive, and so forth. So the economy must respond. The crime situation must be under control, so that economy responds very well. So therefore, we need everybody in this fight.
Wow, that's very quite interesting, hey? Because I remember this at that time I was talking to this other friend of mine behind the psychology behind crime. When we were saying that we don't necessarily believe that there's a person who's born as a criminal, that there are issues that happens in a person's life, especially like childhood, when a person is exposed to too much poverty or not having good role models. And then those people end up resorting to crimes because they feel like there's just no way out. Some of those people are even vulnerable to a point where they feel like their only method of survival, they have to go and steal something from another person. So how do you think we can eradicate such a thing?
It's for me. Look, it's important to go back to values. We were in the Western Cape some time back last year when I just joined the department, and we were talking to the community in Inyanga. And because it was a Wednesday, we have small kids of 11, 12 years, 13 years who were in that community engagement. We took interest because we believed that at that time these children should be at school, not in a community engagement where we were, because it was during school time. It was disturbing to hear the children say it's better they participate in the street economy, where they sell drugs for people and so forth, instead of being at school, because they get paid to support their families. But more disturbing to hear parents saying, there's nothing we can do about these children anymore because they've become gangs and they are so dangerous to ourselves as parents. So all I'm saying is that the value system of families is very important. But we then say to social development, as part of our mechanism to fight crime, plays a critical role, because social development has an ability to intervene and be able to profile families within a schooling environment or within the community, so that we know what interventions must we bring. So it's important to go back to value system. It's important to get everybody on board, but it's important for these countries to grow the economy, so that we start responding to the high levels of unemployment and deal with this thing. And if we do so, we will be able to eradicate and minimize the involvement of children in crime.
Wow, that's very quite interesting. So what strategies or programs does the Secretariat have in place to address gender-based violence and also improve the safety for vulnerable populations in South Africa?
Look, it's very important. Gender-based violence, it has become a scourge, and the president of the country has labeled it a scourge, and we must deal with it. And one of the reasons we went to Venda, I'll go back to it. It's because Venda, Thohoyandou as an area, it's within the top 10 in the country in terms of the high levels of gender-based violence, and number one in the province of Limpopo. So we wanted to go and intervene there. Obviously, Inanda is also another area in KZN that is giving us a whole lot of problems in terms of gender-based violence. Hence, the Minister of Police has instructed Civilian Secretariat to go there and try and understand what is happening in this area. So as part of our work to monitor the implementation of gender-based violence and so forth, we've got various forums that we deal with, because we work with provinces across the country. So we've got compliance forums, which is chaired by a civilian secretariat nationally and so forth. And part of the activities is to ensure that the South African Police Service is implementing the Domestic Violence Act correctly. It's simplified, it's understood by everybody, so that you have a higher rate of conviction. But it also brings together all role players, your National Prosecuting Authority, through your Zella care centers, the role that they play. And we report if there are non-compliances to Parliament on quarterly basis. But more importantly, we make recommendations to the police, in particular the National Commissioner, if there are non-compliances, and advise what corrective measures needs to be taken. Because domestic violence is a scourge that we need to eradicate and make sure that our women and children and to a lesser extent men feel safe in communities. We have developed what we call a 6-point plan, and the 6-point plan just deals with what steps needs to be taken when a case of that nature is being reported. So that is basically what we do. We monitor the implementation of Domestic Violence Act, because it gives Civilian Secretariat more authority in terms of monitoring the performance of the police to make sure that cases are dealt with. But we make sure that all police stations in the country, 1,163 of them that have victim friendly facilities. You still have some in the Northern Cape and in the is it Northwest, if I'm not mistaken, that still have a challenge with having victim friendly facilities for victims of gender-based violence. But we strive, even those that do not have, we make sure that at least there must be a gender-based violence desk within those particular police stations. Or if there is no space within that particular police station, we work with NGOs to support the police station to make sure that we have these victim-friendly facilities. Because at the end of the day, you must enhance your socio-psychological services to victims of gender-based violence so that they are able to cope with the aftermath of abuse. And they are being cancelled, hence these victim-friendly facilities and the involvement of social development and the Zella care centers is very involvement of those is very important and so forth. But it's important to also prepare them to be able to go and give evidence in court in terms of comfortability, so that we secure conviction and take away these perpetrators out of our societies and out of our homes and so forth. So yes, gender-based violence is a problem, and that's what Civilian Secretariat for Police do to make sure that everybody plays a role in the fight against the scheduled gender-based violence. Just recently, the ministers in the JCPS cluster have met, and we have developed through the NAT joints what we call a 90-day plan to deal with gender-based violence. So which means everybody within the 90 days from last week or 2 weeks back is hands on deck in the fight against gender-based violence. And this 90-day plan brings everybody on board. All departments on board, including the Department of Corrections and the Department of Justice, because those that are convicted, we want to see them in the register so that people know, or society knows, that these are monsters that should not be in our society and so forth. So yes, gender-based is a problem, gender-based violence is a problem, and we are putting together all resources to deal with it. Thank you.
Wow, I'm quite surprised that you mentioned that you went to Venda, and Venda is also high when it comes to the GBV. Because I am from Venda, so I'm very disappointed to my fellow Venda men when it comes to what is happening regarding GBV. So I also want to ask, so when it comes to GBV, do you think another cause might be that the boy child is not as empowered as the girl child currently? Because I've seen that there's been a lot of women empowerment, but I'm not sure if there's also more focus when it comes to the boy child.
Maybe it's an upbringing issue, the societal values of making men believing that they are entitled. But there's no reason and there's no excuse for gender-based violence, irrespective of what we think makes the boy child to be more entitled. There's no reason for that. We think that maybe yes, there must be a focus, because we've been speaking a lot about how women must protect themselves, children must protect themselves, and speaking less of how men should refrain. Men must just stop doing it. There's no excuse for that. It's being a monster to engage in gender-based violence as a man. I don't think you are not right. I don't think you are not a real man if you do that. So maybe our focus now needs to start shifting, because if we say victims must protect themselves from what? Because these men must just stop, and the women that are abusing men must also stop. So it's both ways. People should be able to live freely. They should be able to walk the streets without fear. They should be able to dress how they want to dress. But parents must also take responsibility. I mean, you can't as parents, a mother, a father, an aunt, a guardian of a child, you can't really go to sleep without knowing where your child is. And we see that most of the violence that happens against the vulnerable groups, women and children, emanates during odd hours. So people that commit this heinous crime, you'll find that they would have been enjoying themselves in places of enjoyment, your taverns and so forth. So we're saying alcohol is also a problem. Alcohol abuse is also a problem in relation to this. Hence, we were very particular. We are now starting to be very particular about the Department of Economic Development to start putting stringent measures in terms of the control of the alcohol selling places and so forth, and call for those that are operating these places to comply with the laws. If the law says don't sell to an underage person, don't sell to an underage person. If it says close at 10 o'clock, close at 10 o'clock. Make sure that patrons that are there are able to go home safely. So these are things that we are starting to now put across. But we are also saying to the ladies, don't go to a tavern. Ungazi ukuthi uyenzani etavern. Uhambe lapana ufike ume, hlale lapana alone, you don't have the money, and you think some men will come and look after you, buy you alcohol and so forth. If you don't have money, just do not go, and so forth. We're not saying that should give men some form of entitlement, no. But don't put yourself in a space where you'll be vulnerable to these predators that call themselves men, and so forth. So if you don't have money, don't go to the tavern, stay at home, and you'll be safe in that way. Don't accept help or drinks from people you don't know, especially people that gives you that offer you alcohol because they want something in return and so forth. No, we're saying that shouldn't be the case.
Wow, thank you so much for highlighting that. So in terms of of sentences when it comes to crimes, to GBV crimes, especially when it comes to things like rape and also to women killings? Do you think there should be stricter sentences when it comes to that, or
No.
harsher sentences?
No, definitely. In this country, we are starting to see, or for in the past, we are starting to see harsher sentences being imposed to perpetrators of gender-based violence, in particular rape, murder, and so forth. And courts are imposing harsher sentences, which we welcome. But we still have areas of improvement and so forth. Sitting here, I do not understand until now why Omotoso is a free man, quite honestly. I think if you have experienced, well-trained prosecutors and so forth, people like that shouldn't be walking the streets of this country, should be behind bars. And people like that do not belong in this country, quite honestly, because this is a country that is full of prosperity and opportunities. So we don't want people who drags the good name of the country down. So people like that really belong to prison. But all we're saying is that we're starting to see, or we're seeing courts imposing harsher sentences, which we welcome. And they should continue to do so, to impose harsher sentences for people who rape our children. I have not understood the explanation why a man will find joy to rape a 2-year, 6 months, year-old baby. For me, there is no explanation for that, irrespective of what. Where we were, they say these are ritual killings, and so forth. And if we say these are ritual killings by certain sector of society to practice certain cultural or caste activities, we're saying this should stop. I mean, so crimes of that nature deserves really harsher sentences, and we welcome those sentences that are being imposed. Where we fall short, like in the case of Omotoso, I'm saying let's improve. Let's make sure that the NPA trained the prosecutors very well. They understood. There is something that is also being done, which we don't want to see it being done. When a case is being reported, you'll find that people go on Monday to now withdraw the case because now they've reconciled. We're saying this should stop as well when you report a case, because if you withdraw it, you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, and so forth. But we also don't want NPA to play mediation role in gender-based violence crime. There should be no mediation in relation to that. People must just be prosecuted without any mediation. But people must not abuse the system to use the police to solve domestic differences. Because sometimes we have domestic differences, we run to the police to open a case. On Monday, you come and report and withdraw that particular case. We're saying this should not happen. You withdraw a domestic violence because it's a very serious matter. It has to be followed through. People must be arrested and prosecuted accordingly.
So just to follow up on that, regarding the Omotoso case, I hope I won't be overstepping my boundaries. Do you believe that the more money you have, the more easy it is for one to get away with crime?
Not really. I don't think it's about money. It's about our competency to prosecute. It's really not about money. It's our competency to prosecute. I've read the judgment, and I've seen how the judge delivered that judgment, that if anything that the judge says is correct, because the NPA have said to us they are studying the judgment and so forth, they will decide whether to appeal that decision or not to appeal that decision and so forth. But personally, I've read the judgment, and I've not read the transcripts of the trial. But looking at that judgment, I can tell you now that we fell short of prosecutorial skills in that matter. So it's not about the money. It's about our ability to have presented the case in court that would have led to the conviction. And because of that, we have let down the victims. And the perpetrator is out there. God knows what he's doing wherever he is, and so forth, and hoping that he doesn't come back to this country ever again.
And if that's the case, do you think we should equip our people in terms of prosecuting skills?
Definitely, there needs to be more training, making sure that our prosecutors are well equipped, making sure that our prosecutors prosecute without fear or favor, making sure that there is capacity and competency to prosecute cases of this nature, irrespective of who you are, and so forth. If the evidence is before you, present the evidence in a manner that leads to conviction.
All right, thank you. So could you provide examples of recent successful initiatives or reforms championed by the Secretariat that have had a tangible impact on policing or public safety?
Important. Initially, we have said policing is a whole of society and a whole of government approach. And we realize that if we don't stop the silo mentality in government, we will not stop, we will not win in the fight against crime. The Minister of Police, Umatsengwane, as he came in, and we discussed this matter, gave an instruction that we need to start pulling resources together. And as a result, we have now analyzed the crime stats. We realized that 80% of the crime is committed in major towns or major cities in the country, so metros, if you were to call it that way. Johannesburg, Ekurhuleni, Tshwane, in Gauteng, Nelson Mandela Bay in the Eastern Cape, and Western Cape in the Western Cape, Durban in KwaZulu-Natal. We then pulled everybody together and we have signed what we call cooperation agreement. All three spheres of government and metros in these areas, because we believe that if we can make an impact in these metros, and especially violent crime and so forth, hijacking, cash in transit and so forth, those type of crimes, gangs, drugs and so forth, we will definitely have some success in the country in bringing crime down. So the cooperation agreements bring all spheres of government together, both vertical and horizontal, to work together. Now, we are starting to see results. Gauteng have even taken it further after signing the cooperation with the three metros in Gauteng to extend it to the wide province in terms of cooperation, remove the boundaries, share resources, share information amongst law enforcement, but pull together society to assist. So we've seen this stakeholder involvement greatly at the level of government and at the level of society. So it creates a better policing, better visible policing, because every resource is there. Police are sharing a surveillance system such as cameras and so forth with the metros and other local municipalities and so and integrated. We share information which also gives us better response. So we're starting to see results. We're starting to see people getting arrested. We're starting to see government working together. We still have challenges because this is a new approach. We still have challenges here and there in terms of the actual implementation, but we are seeing an impact in relation to our improved policing where we have signed cooperation agreements.
Wow, that's great to hear. So when it comes to social media awareness in terms of crime prevention, what steps have you taken so far?
Yeah, I'm not good in this thing of social media. But look, there is no platform too small for us. Civilian Secretariat for Police, like we say, we have to be everywhere in terms of our initiatives. And therefore, a greater communication mechanism gets society to be aware of what is happening. Hence, we want to be present everywhere. We must be present on TikTok. We must be present on Facebook. We must be present on Instagram and everywhere else. And we must be present in all media platforms to communicate with society in terms of what we're doing and how society must get involved. So yes, there's no platform that is too small. But when you look at the media trajectory, young people are more active in social media now. So it becomes very important for us that we are present in that space and we occupy that particular space, so that young people must now get involved in initiatives in the fight against crime and so forth, and participate as well in this initiative. So yes, it's important to be involved and be present in all media platforms.
Okay, so which media platforms can one find the Civilian Secretariat for Police Office?
Yeah, we have our website, which is there were challenges in relation to the functionality of the website, but that has since been corrected. So if you go to a government website, you will find Civilian Secretariat for Police. But it's a department that also exists in provinces. All provinces have what we call provincial secretariat, which are housed in community safety of the departments of provincial departments and so forth. And just to demonstrate how important this thing is, in Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal, premiers of these two provinces decided to make sure that they take this department under their wing and becomes executive authorities for these departments and so forth. So that tells you that how serious we take the fight against crime in various provinces. So we do have footprint across the country, but our national office is here in Pretoria in the CBD, and the addresses are there in the website. We can know where we find us, because we also deal with complaints against the service delivery complaints against the police. So it's important that departments know where to find Civilian Secretariat for Police.
All right. I hope you've heard our DG with the most important information. So DG, which message can you give for G20, as you know that we'll be hosting G20 in November?
Important activity for the country. For South Africa to be leading the G20 under President Ramaphosa. What we need to see is the development of Africa. We're a country that comes from a very horrible past. Throughout Africa, there have been chapters of stories you can tell in the African continent. So it's important that Africa begins to take its space in the world, and G20 creates that platform. Africa is a very important continent. South Africa plays a key role in the continent. So G20 provides that platform, but it provides a platform of Africa, the development of Africa as a continent, to take its space in the world, to sustain itself, to be dependent on itself, and to make sure that there is a safer space to do business in Africa. The African wars, where we still have challenges of wars, they must cease to exist, so that it opens space for Africa, for development of Africa, and so forth. And once we do that, and then we'll see the economies of the African continent starting to change for the better, and the people starting to participate in the economy, working, employment, and so forth. And prosperity. Like I've said, this country is alive with possibilities, and it's a country that very beautiful to live in, and it's a country that must be nurtured to realize its maximum potential in terms of development and prosperity.
Thank you so much, DG. It was such an honor to have you here with us. You've also let us know about the most important information that a lot of people didn't know, especially when it comes to crime.
Thank you very much. It's lovely to be here. Thank
And
you.
South Africa, thank you so much for viewing this show. And from me, your host, Munjezi Makuba,
Nda.